Hello and welcome to Sunday Times Driving's Kicking the Tyres Live. I'm Will Dron, acting editor of driving.co.uk and owner of a national race licence that's never actually been used.
And I'm James Mills, and my claim to fame is that in a world exclusive cover story for a certain weekly magazine, I once pushed a Jensen sports car to the limit, literally pushed it.
Yeah, James, about that, you got a cover story of pushing a car. You didn't actually drive it.
Pushed to the limit.
You didn't.
That's what it said. Pushed to the limit on the cover.
So you weren't lying.
Yeah.
You pushed it to the limit.
We pushed it.
Okay, well done. Each week we'll be interviewing a celebrity about their cars and their careers. So let's jump straight in and introduce our guest this week: writer, TV presenter, actor, and one of the stars of hilarious space spoof Red Dwarf, Robert Llewellyn. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome, Robert. Thank you very much for coming in. Now, we're on Facebook Live, guys, so if you've got any questions for Robert, please put them into the comments under the video, and I will put them to Robert.
Yeah, so first one from us, though. You're probably best known for playing Crichton, a robot with a head, and I'm going to quote here, shaped like an amusingly shaped ice cube in Red Dwarf, but you've an enormously varied career. Where did it all start?
Oh, heaven knows. I mean, well, I was originally, I don't even know where it started, back in the mists of the 1970s. So I did, fell into doing what was then called alternative comedy. Right. So the kind of likes of Rick Mayall, Ade Edmondson, Nigel Planer, as a very old mate of mine, Ben Elton.
What happened to all of those guys?
None of their careers went to much. So there was a kind of this boom, really, in London, in the sort of pubs and, late night cabarets and things like that. And I was in a group that we performed thousands of times over that period, so late 70s to the kind of mid 80s, and then wrote a sitcom for the early Channel 4 that was atrociously bad. I mean, really, genuinely rubbish. It was all sit and no com. It was very, very painfully awful. And then sort of had a crisis of confidence, became a cyclist messenger courier in London because I had no money.
Well, so you just gave up?
Yeah, just completely. I'll never do that again. And then I was delivering packages to production companies that I had hired like 6 months before to work for me. And I was cycling in and saying, "Can you take your helmet off, please?" Can you sign for that? So real change in circumstances. But then I wrote a play when I was in the States about which was inspired by RoboCop, about a robo yuppie. So who didn't kill people but made money. That was a kind of joke about that. And then
like a banker then.
Yeah, like a robo banker.
Okay.
But he had a glitch in his software which gave him sexual drives, which meant I could copulate with a desk because he was attracted. So there's quite a lot of Crichton in him in some ways. And then the producers of Red Dwarf saw that play and said, "Do you want to come and be a robot?"
Now you've become something of a pioneer as a vlogger these days.
Well, is vlogger the right term?
I don't know, because I bet if I'd heard the term vlogger in the 1970s, I'd have thought that's disgusting. What's that mean?
You've been vlogging.
Yeah, you've been vlogging, you dirty man, on the lay-by. No, I don't know that. I'm certainly not a pioneer. There's lots of people who do it far more successfully and have done it earlier than I have. But yeah, I've been really intrigued by what the potential of that, of broadcasting yourself without going through an intermediary, which is what I'd done for the previous sort of 30 years in normal telly. So, it's taken a long time, but it has really grown this year. So I do the series I do called Fully Charged, which is specifically about sort of electric vehicles, renewable energy, and the connections between them. So it's a very wide-ranging series of topics.
And you've undergone a conversion to electric.
Yeah, well, that
during
happened.
That time.
Yes, I mean that happened, but that happened really through Scrap Heap. So when I was doing Scrap Heap in America, Scrap Heap Challenge, we did the first series we did in America, 2001. And I witnessed and had a ride in a very, at that time, incredibly fast little electric car, an experimental car called the T0, just by chance. They were running it next to where we were filming. It was a real fluke event. Yeah. And I had no idea about it. And the teams on Scrap Heap had built monster trucks. Yes. So the absolute antithesis of anything about fuel efficiency.
It does seem quite dirty and oily.
Yeah, and I was thrilled to announce that one of the trucks was doing a gallon to the mile. That was its fuel efficiency.
That was a kind of
definitely a
eureka moment,
a turning moment. Yeah.
So, I mean, Jeremy Clarkson might call you a sort of eco-mentalist, that kind of thing. Has it irritated you that it's taken quite a long time, and there are a lot of people out there still that aren't really seeing, the tide turning and the benefits of cleaner driving.
Yes, I mean, I think I quite enjoy them now. I mean, there was a time I think when it annoyed me, and now I go, oh, good, there's someone who's saying it's all rubbish.
But you get it all on Twitter and all.
You get all that, but much less than I used to. So,
right.
so there's definitely a shift in attitudes, I think, and a generalised shift in attitude. And there's always going to be people, and I defend them. My brother is a classic petrol head.
Yeah.
And he's been in the Tesla and he's impressed with it and he thinks it's extraordinary, but it's not a proper car and it's not a real man's car. And I just think that's great because it's generational. Yeah. And I want those engines and that understanding and that technology to exist for a few generations so people can see what we used to do.
Yeah.
But it's so clearly, I think I don't feel like the need to make an argument. The internal combustion engine is in its last days, without any question across the globe. It will be around for another 50 years, but they're basically like steam engines and they'll be wonderful. And I want funny old men with unusual facial hair to polish them.
Did you pass your driving test first time?
No, second time. That was partly because I did crossover steering. I did that.
That's the proper way to do it.
Well, it is. But I'd learnt to drive in a truck, and you couldn't do that, and it would take hours. So yeah. I'd learnt to do that. And I learnt to double declutch because the truck had no synchromesh. So I was driving my mother's little Renault with the gears that went like that, like a walking stick coming out the dashboard. Quite a dated Renault. So I was going, and it was automatic. I just double declutched all the time. Yeah. So yeah, I failed the first time. Could pass the second.
And what was your first car?
Was a Morris Minor van,
right.
An old fruit and veg van.
And it was entirely reliable.
Well, actually, it was quite reliable. Yeah, the gearbox stripped itself, so I only had third gear. That was quite bad.
Okay, we got a picture of
that. Yeah, it's a classic. I mean, that was a post office one. So mine was exactly the same design, but mine was dark green. It was, and it had slightly wider tyres.
But you were quite often underneath the.
I spent a lot of time underneath it. Broke both half shafts. Both front wheels fell off. That's a design thing. You'd think you'd work it out. It's very simple. So there's a bolt on the bottom and it was torsion arm suspension on the front, and there's a bolt that goes like that with a nut on it like that. So you do that up, and then all the weight and pressure on the wheel was pushing that way.
Right.
So when that bolt sheared, the front wheel came off, and they always sheared, and it had passed its MOT, and it was a week later that I was at traffic lights, luckily very slow. And I always remember quite an attractive woman walked past and I went, I'm a cool dude in my Morris van. And she kind of glanced at me, and then the car went, just at that point. In a really busy street in the middle of London. You can't push that to the side of the road.
No,
it's not my car. It's not my car.
What came after that? What other cars have you had?
I think it was then Golfs. I had a Beetle, which was a mate's mum's car, which was a beautiful, and I wish I hadn't trashed it because it just was in London, so it got kind of bashed up. It was in immaculate condition. Early 60s Beetle, and had been driven like 2,000 miles, and this was in the late 70s. Wow. Really good condition, and then by the time I'd finished driving, it was shagged. So then it was Golfs. So I did kind of, normal Golfs through the whole. Yeah, so I had one very like that, a white one like that. Would have been about that year.
Now a classic.
Now a classic. Now I had a GTI. That was the.
Really?
With a black stripe down it. Mark 1, exactly the same design. Mark 1 GTI. I bought from Detective Inspector Thatcher. I've always remembered him. So he was a proper policeman, and so I thought, well, he won't have nicked that.
He didn't leave a sort of crowbar or. Because quite often policemen carry something in their vehicle.
Yeah, I don't know.
If they're attacked.
No, I tell you what he did leave, which I shouldn't be slandering him. I hope he's retired now. It was a long time ago. A radar speed check. Little beep, 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 beep. So if there was a radar thing, it went beep, 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 and I'd forgotten it was in there. It was like buried under the dashboard.
Gosh. Right.
And I was driving down the M4 once, and I beep, 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 and I went, what's that? Oh my God, slowed down.
Very early.
And then I saw a cop with the speed gun.
It must be one of the first systems
I don't know
going.
how reliable it was. It was very 1980s tech.
When you started a company selling the products, you made a huge amount of money. What else has there been? You had the Prius, obviously, and now you've got a.
Well, I've got a Nissan Leaf, which I've had for the last 6 years, which is brilliant and dented and has chicken poo all over it. It's not been well looked after, but it works. There we go.
Which generation?
So it was the very first generation.
Okay.
So the Japanese made one. So it's got the heater that basically means if you turn the heater on, you can't go further than about a mile. That's cruel. That's a Clarksonism. But it does. It takes 10 miles off the range if you turn the heater on. So it was really the early version. But we've done just over 56,000 miles in it. It's never gone wrong. It's had punctures and a new wiper blade on the back. And that's it. So now, what's intriguing with that is economically. it's the cheapest way you could have driven 56,000 miles, even if you bought the cheapest, if you're buying a new car. So even if a car that was a quarter the price, it's now I've
So the price of the car and the fuel.
and the fuel, 650 quid on electricity,
tax.
and lack of tax. So its tyres have been the most expensive thing. I got a puncture driving over a nail in a bit of wood that I left there.
Are you a Tesla fanboy now? Would you say?
I'd like to say I'm not I don't want to be a fanboy of anyone, but I mean, I have a Tesla Model S, and it is an extraordinary machine, and it updates and it learns more. I mean, I just want all the other manufacturers to go, we can do better than that, rather than let's try and catch up. Yeah, because they've really moved the bar on, so they've really set a challenge to other manufacturers. But I mean, I've just been in California. The number of Teslas on the road is mind-boggling. I mean, it's just... and it will have absolutely knocked the socks off, Mercedes, Audi, BMW, which you used to see. I mean, particularly in sort of places like West Hollywood and Brentwood,
it was
all European. It was all black European limos, were really the hip thing to have. They've gone.
With the Model X,
and it's all Teslas now.
I was in LA recently, and the soccer moms have definitely adopted the Model X.
The
sort
Model
of
X,
SUV come people carrier.
Yeah.
It's built in their back garden, and it's clean.
Yeah.
So before Fully Charged, you had another online series called Carpool.
Yes.
Where you drove celebrities from A to B and interviewed them along the way. That's an absolutely brilliant idea. Now, did it ever occur to you to stop off for coffee en route, or maybe do karaoke in the car?
No, that's where I missed out.
Yeah,
So
because
just
that's a
gave 'em
really
lift.
good idea.
Yeah, I'm not going to waste time getting them coffee as well.
Can you sing?
No, not at all. And I can't remember the lyrics. So
Would you take your top off while doing it?
Oh, don't show that picture. That's terrible.
That is quite shocking, isn't it? Yeah, that's quite...
Very popular, though.
Yeah, no, I think both of them are great. I mean, I think they're very funny. And a lot of people have said, have you sued James Corden or Jerry Seinfeld? And they go, not really. I mean, it's, I called it Carpool because I've been in America a lot, and that's the carpool lane has two people in, and that's where it came from. But it's not. Other people have put cameras in cars for years. It wasn't that original in that sense, But it worked. It was the way I could do a really cheap experiment with like doing a weekly series online and see if anybody watched, and it did work. It had millions of people watch it, which was fantastic. So I was happy, and I did a lot of them. I think I did about 140 episodes or something. So
yeah,
I'd still like to do more.
140.
It's something like that altogether.
Did you repeat any of the celebs?
Yes. So Craig Charles did it twice, just because I thought, I'll give him a lift anyway. I might as well put cameras in. He'll waffle on. I can't remember who else. There was a couple of people I did more than one, but mostly it was different. And a lot of people I'd never met before they got in the car. Patrick Stewart. I'd never met him before.
Yeah. That was great. It was over 300,000 views on YouTube.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. So
and he was. That was the only one I was genuinely nervous before I met him. I'd never met him at all, and I drove to his house, and he made me a cup of tea, and I sat in his kitchen, and we had a chat, and he was lovely. And then
we asked him how his little sci-fi series went.
Yeah, we did discuss.
Now, I've teed up a little game that's called Clarkson or Dwarf. So it's actually these are quotes, and they're either from Red Dwarf or they're from Jeremy Clarkson, our very own Sunday Times columnist. So,
yes, of course.
The first one: it's better to have loved and lost than to listen to an album by Olivia Newton-John. Is that Clarkson or is that Red Dwarf?
I wish it was Red Dwarf. I think that's Clarkson.
Let's find out.
I was going to say Red Dwarf.
I'm afraid.
I was going to say Red Dwarf.
Wow.
That comes from Red Dwarf.
Wow, there we go. Well, that just shows what I know.
Next one. Americans cannot say mate any more than Germans can say squirrel.
That could be Red Dwarf, but I'm gonna go with Clarkson again.
Okay.
Right.
Clarkson,
yeah, I thought that was Clarkson. Yeah. God, it's quite interesting actually. It's not that easy to
see. When I was putting this together, I wasn't sure if it would work, but it actually surprisingly interesting. Germany, give them a country, and they want to take one next door as well.
I think that's Red Dwarf. Is that going to be Clarkson? Because we've said stuff like that on Red Dwarf. I've never made that connection before. That's terrifying.
Jesus was a hippie, he had long hair and he didn't have a job. What more do you want?
Yeah, that was definitely Red Dwarf. Yes.
Good, yeah, that's Rimmer, I think. And Christian rock music, if that doesn't scare her off, nothing will. It's got to be Red Dwarf.
I think that's Red Dwarf.
Red Dwarf as well. Well done. And you can design a film for women. It'll have Hugh Grant in it.
That's got to be Clarkson.
Yes. Very good. I think that's
very good. One more.
That is quite.
And there is another one. Science fiction is thriving. Only today, it's all being written by global warming enthusiasts.
Oh, how wonderful! Now that's lovely, Jezza.
That is the lovely Jezza.
The lovely Jezza.
Right. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. But thank you so much, Robert. Thank you for coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching. Join us again next week at around the same time, but we'll flag it up on Twitter and Facebook beforehand. So thanks again.